The bell above the Blue Water Grill's entrance gave a tired jingle as Daniel Carson stepped inside, the door's closing gust of wind trailing behind him like a memory. At 62, Daniel still carried himself with the upright posture of a Marine, though time had softened the edges. His silver hair was trimmed in a tight regulation cut, his back straight despite the ache in his leg that never really went away. A faded green jacket stretched over his shoulders, its Marine Corps patch dulled by years of wear. Beside him walked Rocky, a large Belgian Malinois, his movement fluid and alert. His vest bore clear lettering, "Service Dog, do not distract." His presence was quiet but unmistakable. Steady, practiced, deliberate. Rocky didn't sniff or wander. He stayed at Daniel's side, eyes scanning, body tuned to his handler's slightest shift in breath or posture. The hostess glanced up from her station but didn't smile. Her eyes briefly landed on Rocky before shifting away. Daniel asked for a corner table, one near the window, away from the larger crowds. The woman said nothing, simply nodded and gestured toward a small booth. Rocky slid under the table in one smooth motion, positioning himself between Daniel's feet. The space was just enough for both of them. Daniel sat down slowly, wincing slightly as he adjusted his leg. The waitress arrived, young and polite but distant, setting down a water glass without making eye contact. She left quickly. Daniel wasn't new to this kind of reception. He'd learned long ago that not everyone understood service dogs, especially the kind trained for invisible wounds. Rocky wasn't there for show. He was trained to sense the subtle shifts in Daniel's breathing, the tension in his hands when the tremors started. He could press against Daniel's leg with just enough weight to anchor him, to pull him back from memories too sharp to face alone. Daniel had been through things most people couldn't imagine. Ambushes in Helmand, dust storms that turned daylight to darkness, nights filled with static-filled radio transmissions, and the weight of too many names to remember. But none of that showed on the surface. He didn't wear medals or announce his history. He only asked for peace and a quiet place to sit. Across the room, a woman in designer sunglasses wrinkled her nose and leaned toward her lunch companion, whispering as her eyes darted toward the dog beneath the table. Daniel caught the look, recognized the judgment. He focused instead on Rocky's slow, even breathing, on the warmth of the sun through the glass. For the moment, that was enough. But as he sipped his water and waited for his meal, he had a feeling peace would not last long in this place. 40 minutes passed. The hum of conversation filled the Blue Water Grill as servers darted between tables with plates of grilled salmon and iced teas. Daniel sat quietly in his corner, his hands resting on the table, fingers tapping once, then stopping. Rocky remained still, his body curled neatly beneath the booth, eyes occasionally flicking toward the kitchen door, then back to his handler. No one had approached since the initial glass of water. When the manager finally arrived, he didn't come with warmth. He was in his 30s, polished, with a name badge that read Bryce and an expression that suggested his patience was easily worn. "Sir," he began, his voice already tinged with irritation, "we have a strict no-pets policy in the dining area." Daniel looked up, his voice calm. "He's not a pet. He's a trained service animal. I have his documentation if you'd like to see it." He reached for his wallet, but Bryce waved the offer away without glancing. "I don't need to see anything. Our policy is about guest comfort, and some people are uncomfortable around dogs, especially while eating." A few heads turned. The woman in sunglasses nodded approvingly from 2 tables over. "Exactly," she said, not even trying to lower her voice. "Dog or not, it's unsanitary. Military or not." Daniel inhaled deeply. He knew this kind of battle, fought not with bullets but with looks, assumptions, and indifference. "This dog has been with me through more than you can imagine," he said evenly. "He's trained to respond to my medical condition. He saved my life, more than once." Bryce crossed his arms. "I'm not questioning your service. I'm enforcing a policy." Daniel stood slowly, his dignity intact despite the growing discomfort around him. Rocky rose in perfect sync, stepping into place at Daniel's side with the precision of a soldier. Daniel reached into his pocket and placed a few bills on the table, not for the food he never received, but perhaps for the space he'd taken up. I served so people could have the freedom to make choices, Daniel said quietly. Even poor ones. He turned toward the door. As he left, the hostess kept her eyes down. The young waitress behind the counter bit her lip but said nothing. Outside, Daniel crossed to the park across the street and sat on a bench overlooking the harbor. He reached into his coat and pulled out a wrapped sandwich, tuna on whole wheat. He broke it in half, offering a piece to Rocky. "Not what I promised you, buddy," he murmured. "But it's better than nothing." Rocky took the food gently. His eyes never left Daniel's face. From a nearby sidewalk, a group of college students snickered as they passed. "Probably faking it," one muttered. "My cousin has a service hamster. Maybe I should get it a vest." Another laughed. Daniel said nothing. He'd learned long ago that some people only understood battles they could see. He pulled out a small photo from his wallet. It showed him younger, wounded on a stretcher. Beside him, Rocky, younger too, stood alert with tags around his neck, Bravo Unit, K9 Division. The blood on his fur wasn't his own. Behind Daniel, the city bus rolled by. The advertisement on its side read, "Honor our veterans. They fought for your freedom." Beneath it, in smaller letters, "If you believe four-legged heroes deserve respect too, type Rocky." Daniel smirked at the irony. Back in the restaurant, conversations had resumed. The manager retreated to his office. Plates clattered. The woman with sunglasses ordered crème brûlée. No one noticed the quiet ripples that had started to move through town. Not yet. The hours passed quietly in the park across from the Blue Water Grill. Daniel sat on a worn bench beneath a leafless maple, the weak winter sun resting against his shoulders. Rocky, ever alert but relaxed, lay at his feet with his head on Daniel's boot. A pigeon landed nearby, but the dog didn't twitch. He had more important things to watch. Daniel tore the last corner from his tuna sandwich and handed it to Rocky, who took it with the gentle dignity of a soldier accepting rations. In the back of Daniel's wallet sat the same photograph he always carried. Himself, 20 years younger, laid out on a stretcher with blood crusted in his hair. And beside him, just as alert then as now, was Rocky. Leaner, younger, but unmistakably the same dog. The tag on his collar read, "Bravo Unit, K9 Division." "Still got it?" Daniel whispered, rubbing a hand over the dog's graying fur. "Still watching my six." Across the street, the Blue Water Grill bustled in its routine, unaware that everything was about to change. At 2:11 p.m., the door of the restaurant swung open with unusual force. Heads turned. The bell rang once, then was followed by the silence of anticipation. 5 men in full Marine Corps dress blues stepped inside with the unmistakable rhythm of those trained to move in formation. Polished shoes clicked against the tile. Not a wrinkle on a uniform, not a hesitation in step. At the front stood a tall man with a chiseled jaw and storm-gray eyes. The name tag on his chest read, "McMillan." He approached the hostess stand, his tone steady and unmistakably commanding. "I'm Captain James McMillan. We're looking for a man named Daniel Carson, and his service dog, Rocky." Utensils paused midair. A toddler pointed from his booster seat. Even the espresso machine seemed to quiet. The manager, Bryce, appeared from the back, his expression stiffening. They're no longer here. There was a bit of a misunderstanding earlier." Captain McMillan didn't flinch. "A misunderstanding?" He scanned the room. "Sergeant Daniel Carson saved 4 of my men during an ambush in Helmand Province. His dog, Rocky, was wounded dragging a corporal out of enemy fire. Rocky holds a service rank. He's received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. That's more than some of us." He reached into his coat and pulled out a framed photograph. It showed Rocky suited in full tactical gear, flanked by Marines in desert fatigues. Beneath the photo, "Brother, you didn't just turn away a veteran," McMillan continued. "You turned away one of ours. You turned away family." Bryce tried to stammer a reply, but nothing came. The woman who'd complained earlier stared down at her untouched cheesecake. No one dared make eye contact with the Marines. "We're not here to shame anyone," Macmillan said after a pause. "We're here to remind you that dignity doesn't require credentials, and respect shouldn't need a biography." With that, the 5 Marines turned and left as swiftly as they'd come. Across the street, Daniel watched them exit from his truck's rearview mirror, his brows drawing together. He hadn't expected reinforcements. He'd only wanted peace. The restaurant doors opened again, this time more gently. A young waitress stepped out, cradling a takeout container with trembling hands. She crossed the road quickly, cheeks flushed. Daniel rolled down the window. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "None of us knew, but we should have treated you better regardless. This is for you and Rocky." He accepted the container silently. "We were wrong." Her handwritten note beneath the pie read, "Let us try to make it right." Daniel looked at her, then across the street at the faces in the window, no longer judgmental, just still. He glanced down at Rocky. "What do you think, pal? One more chance." Rocky's tail gave a quiet, single wag. Permission granted. Truce accepted. By the time the sun dipped low over the town, the Blue Water Grill was no longer just a restaurant. It was a symbol of reckoning. And behind its doors, something irreversible had begun. 2 hours after the Marines left, 2 black sedans pulled up to the curb outside. These weren't military vehicles. Their sleek, mirrored windows and quiet engines spoke of another kind of authority. From them stepped 3 men in tailored suits and long coats, each carrying a briefcase. One was a lawyer. One was an executive. The third was harder to place, older, dignified, with a ribboned pin on his lapel and the posture of someone who knew command. Inside, Bryce the manager stood stiffly in his office, sweat forming at his collar. He didn't yet understand what was unfolding, but the tremor in his hands told him it was bigger than a single complaint. The man with the lapel pin introduced himself to the staff simply. "Major General Alan Thorne, retired. I'm here on behalf of several friends of Daniel Carson." The staff stilled. "I represent a small trust," he added, "created years ago by veterans who believe in honoring the quiet heroes who never seek the spotlight. We've been watching how this story is spreading, and we're taking action." Bryce tried to salvage control. "We've apologized. There's no need to escalate." But General Thorne was already seated at a table with the restaurant's owner, who had been summoned unexpectedly. Her eyes widened as he placed legal documents in front of her. "I'd like to acquire a controlling interest in the Blue Water Grill," he said. "We intend to turn this place into something that reflects the values Sergeant Carson and Rocky stand for." The deal closed by sundown. That same evening, Daniel received a call on his old flip phone. He didn't recognize the number, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "Danny," came the gravel-thick voice. "It's Macmillan. You might want to take a drive back to the grill." Daniel hesitated. He'd never liked attention. But Rocky's ears perked up, and somehow, Daniel knew the dog felt it too. Something had changed. When Daniel pulled into the parking lot, he noticed first the new sign. The old one, faded and chipped, had been replaced with clean, gold-lettered text. "Rocky's Table, a place for heroes." Beneath it, a bronze plaque bore the words, "In honor of those who serve in silence. No voice ignored. No service forgotten." Inside, the dining room had transformed. The once drab wall by the kitchen now held a framed row of photos. Military working dogs from every era: Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. A new veterans corner offered free meals, reading materials, and a shelf of donated jackets and gloves for colder months. But the real surprise came when General Thorne addressed Daniel directly. "We're not offering charity," he said. "We're offering gratitude. Pick any meal, any table, whenever you like. But more than that, we'd like to name this place after your partner." Daniel looked down at Rocky, who sat proudly, head high, as if he knew. One of the suits, the executive, added, "And starting next month, a portion of this restaurant's profits will fund service dog training for disabled veterans. Rocky won't just be honored here. He'll inspire a dozen more just like him." Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't speak, not at first. Just reached down and placed a hand on Rocky's back, his fingers tangling in the fur that had been there for every hard moment of the past decade. Then he finally said, "You're honoring the better half of this team." That night, the Blue Water Grill, now Rocky's table, served more meals to veterans than it had in the past year combined. And the only person promoted that evening? The young waitress who crossed the street to deliver the apology meal. Her new name tag read, Assistant Manager, Veteran Outreach Coordinator. Daniel returned often to Rocky's table, not for recognition, but for the calm it offered. His favorite booth, now marked with a small American flag and a polished brass plaque, overlooked the veterans' wall and the corner where new service dogs occasionally trained with their handlers. He came with Rocky as long as the dog could walk. In the end, when Rocky's legs grew too tired, Daniel carried him in, and the staff never blinked. One morning, after Rocky had passed peacefully at home, Daniel sat alone in their booth for the first time. The staff left his coffee untouched and the opposite seat unfilled. In its place, a folded flag and a photo of Rocky in uniform. The young waitress, now in a blazer, sat beside him quietly. "He made this place kinder," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "He always led the way." And above the entrance, etched in gold, Rocky's table, where loyalty is always welcome.